Welcome to this video talk for our Facebook group question of the week. Now, it's always live on Facebook, on our free Facebook group at 7:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. If you're watching the replay, it's released at 10 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, but that's, of course, the recorded version. Now, what I'm doing here with the Facebook group is putting these questions of the week out there for the purpose of being able to engage people, and I'm allowing those of you that are not yet a part of our Facebook group to be part of the engagement process. Now, of course, a lot of other things we do on the YouTube channel are directly live, and those, of course, include our Rant of the Week, which is Wednesdays, released at 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, and our main broadcasts, which are at 4 p.m. the third Sunday of every month. So that's just a brief rendition of our schedule. Now, the question of the week was, of course, have you ever been spooked in a magical ritual? Now, we had some interesting responses. Some, of course, had some physical manifestations that, really were quite something for them. And others have said, no, not really. And they seem to be sad that that was the case. Well, don't feel bad if that hasn't happened, because ritual experience is unique to the person doing it. And of course, the more they become involved in the practice and open to different experiences that happen beyond what are expected in the five senses of the body, there's bleed over and different things take place. I had some things happen to me in my own personal practice when, of course, I was really getting into spirit evocation. And of course, this is not something that was planned or anything else. It just happened. And it startled me at that time because, of course, I'd never really done evocative magic on my own before at that time. And I wasn't sure whether or not I was going to be successful. And of course, there's always those elements that are there when you're starting out on this path, things that are referenced in a broadcast I put up called The Main Killers of Magic. I believe the three main killers of magic. And one of those, of course, is self-doubt. And sometimes when these things are going on, things happen. And it was not that we were doubting ourselves, but that we were not confident enough to have the success that we would like to see. And spirits sometimes, because they are more than just energies that we work with, will make things known in ways to rather shock us out of the indoctrinated sense that we have allowed ourselves to be limited in our minds. Well, one of the things that happened to me was during an evocatory rite where I was evoking a spirit, and I was not prepared for the exchange of information that takes place. This is something that I do and will be going into more detail with on the patron side, where it comes to evoking spirits of a bit of a higher rank. There are certain things that happen in the communication exchange that you have to psychologically as well as energetically be prepared for. I wasn't. And of course, there was a response that was a little less than favorable. I had a sense of being attacked by the very spirit that I had called. And the candles on my altar snuffed out. The objects that I had on my altar flew off the altar, and they impacted on the wall behind me. And I had a real sense that something was coming to sort of tune me in. Before I was physically impacted by this, however, I had a sense, almost like a cold burn, of something reaching down into my body between my shoulder blades. And as soon as I clued into that feeling, I was looking at myself from the top of the room. And my body was operating, and I was looking down at it. And I beheld myself stand straight, make a gesture with my right hand, and speak words in a language that I at that time did not know. And everything that was going on stopped immediately. And then, almost at the blink of an eye, I was aware of myself hunched over my altar with my hands on the sides of the table, looking down at my altar cloth, just collecting myself. And the only thing that I can conclude from that experience was that either one of the spirits that is in my, I don't like to call it my retinue, but one of the spirits that actually watches over me decided to directly intervene in the situation. Or perhaps it was my own inner daemon, or a higher genius, whatever you want to call it, taking direct action through my physical body at that time. And whatever it was snuffed. That was the end of it. But, you know, one of the things that I took away from that experience was that all these things that we work with and talk about when successfully operated in are very real. And even if they are expressions, as some people insist, of that which is within us, or whether they are things that we perceive to be without us, or as I've often said, both, because there is a reflection process that goes on between what we perceive to be above and what is below or within, and how they are actually one. It doesn't matter. The experience ends up being real to us. And the things that happen physically on that altar with the candles and the objects, one of them being, of course, my athame, which was sticking in the wall behind me, was actually quite real. And not to be toyed with, and not to be taken flippantly, and not to be done without going through the prerequisites that are necessary to build you for success and power in these things. That's why I belabor this so much, so that if there's any possible way that you can learn from some of the mistakes and stupid dumbass things that I've done, so that you don't have to go through that, then you will, and be stronger for it. And I really want you to understand my motivation and my desire in that, and that it's not something that's taking away from, well, what a lot of people like to put out there as the fun of magic. No, it can be very rewarding, very powerful, very exciting in ways that you can never really fathom unless you do it. It also is very laborious. It can also be quite boring at times, because there's so many things that we must do to change things within ourselves. And it's like two rails on a track. The railway doesn't operate without both of them in place. And that's why I go through these things in the way that I do. And, you know, stuff like that, it's not a joke. Okay? But one of the things that can be a very detrimental aspect to our practice, it could be a detriment to yours, a detriment to mine, a detriment to anything else, and that is fear. Now, I just touched on self-doubt, and of course, we've all had to deal with that. Because, of course, in starting out in something new, you don't start out knowing it all. Good grief, I've been at this for over 30 years. I don't know it all. There are libraries that could be filled on multiple planet Earths that are filled with things that I don't know. And guess what? That will never change, and neither will it for you. Because you know what? Infinity can never be defined. It is only something that in a continual process, we learn more, we practice more, we assimilate more, we become more. And we all start somewhere. Enough of this, of criticizing people who do something and it's not done right. Well, guess what? At least they got off their arse and did something. I certainly don't fault you if you go and do something and it fails, or maybe it didn't go right, or it's not the way I would have done it. I don't care. You got out there and did something. Good on you. But, if you have the attitude that you know it all, then you might as well not know anything. Because that stops growth right now. Arrogance. That's not pride. Pride inspires others. Arrogance pushes them down because you're not up to snuff. And arrogance can be so easily crossed into by allowing the egoic mind to have too much control. All it is an interpreter, the egoic mind. We are moving forward in the process of growth, and that process never stops, folks. Never stops. But fear is related to self-doubt in that it is a misgiving of confidence. Let me explain that. Confidence is having a strong knowledge of where you stand in yourself, magically speaking, for whatever purpose that you are doing magic for. It is a belief and confidence, not a belief alone, a belief and confidence and understanding through experience of who you are in your authentic self, and nothing shakes that. Doesn't matter if the whole world goes down around you, that is never shaken. But when you don't have that yet, fear can creep in. And like I gave a quote there from an old Golden Dawn neophyte ritual, one of the things that is said to the new aspirant who is being initiated is that fear is failure. And why is that? That is a very true statement. Fear is failure because it takes energy to that which is doubting who you are, doubting your ability, doubting your connection, because, of course, maybe you haven't realized it yet in your awareness the way you need to, and taking your power away and giving it to whatever it is that you're trying to work with. It puts you in the position of subservience. And that's not success, is it? That's failure in the deepest sense of the word when we're trying to grow and become. And in ritual, it can be very, very dangerous to have fear taking hold of you. How do you get over that? How do you get rid of that? Well, it comes through not only just a knowledge. That is the theory, for lack of a better word, and that's really important to go through. Don't underestimate that. Read widely. Study widely. Don't just take my word for everything. Go in there and look at different things that other people have said, because there's a lot of other folks out there that are really good in what they do and have done this for a long time and longer than me, and they have good things to say, and they have strong understandings of the correspondences of how things relate to one another. Don't only focus on that, but don't underestimate it. The other thing is experience in your knowledge. That comes from practicing, and it also comes from delving into those things that give you that knowledge of who you are. All right? I had an experience, and this is the last thing of myself I'll share here today. I had an experience where I felt like I died. Now, I know I obviously didn't die, or at least I don't think I did. I'm still here. But this was a long time ago. This was probably about 21 years ago. Anyway, I was living in quite impoverished conditions at the time. And, I was quite despairing and quite depressed and everything else, as anybody would be in that state. And I had a vision, I guess, if you will, and it was so real that I could not differentiate between that and anything that I would experience walking down the street in waking life, that I died. And I was in darkness, absolute darkness. There was nothing around me. And yet I could sense there were energies around me, but it was not something that was illuminated. It was completely in darkness. And I was in that state until I accepted that I was there, wherever that was. I have an understanding now that I was getting introduced to an aspect of the infinite. But at that time, I was not aware of that, but I just decided to finally just let go and accept that I was there. And when that happened, in the darkness, I began to see something, and it was sort of like a roiling gray mist, and that gray mist enveloped me and was everywhere. And yet, when I looked to try and see it more clearly, it would just fade away into nothing. And yet, when I wouldn't look at it, it was more prominent. And in that, I would also see features of different entities that were there, almost like they were illuminated in a bluish light. And yet, if I'd look at them, it would just vanish away. And as this was going on, I began to feel like things were expanding more and more. And I just, whatever, I let myself go to it. As that happened, it felt very much like I was being lifted, for lack of a better word, there was no up or down, but expanding, lifting, whatever, into different layers of awareness until there was no awareness of time whatsoever. That was really, really odd. And I couldn't wrap my head around that at all. In fact, when I tried, it just, again, there's no words really to explain it. What ended up taking place is that I began to understand more and more that this awareness was just expanding infinitely in every direction. And I began to hear, for lack of a better word, feel, sense, I suppose, the vibrations of living things all everywhere. Everything from the very space itself between the stars and the planets to the worlds to the everything that was there, including the intelligent things that were there, including humanity, including explosions, everything. And not just in the physical sense either of the universe, but it was just beyond any type of comprehension, and it could not be taken in. And yet, in that timelessness, there was that sense of, I am that. And that is me. And yet it is not. For I did not lose myself, but I was not myself either. It was all part of some mask. And in that state, I realized that I could shift my own focus as long as I kept my individuality in mind. And I could easily let that go and just partake of everything. But when I would allow myself to just focus a little bit on that individuality, I could also take that individuality like a magnifying glass and go anywhere I wanted with it. Look at anything. It was very weird. But there was no sense of, I've been here a long time. It was a sense of, this is forever. And as I let myself just go finally into the allness of everything, that expansion stopped and I started to contract again. And it was like I was being brought back down, contracting back down until I was back in my room. And as I came to myself, I had this sense of how insignificant all of the problems and all of the things that we fear, all of the things that we think are so vital here in the world of limitation, and how ridiculous it all looks from that perspective. And I could not stop laughing. I could not stop laughing. And I felt one of the spirits that is with me speak into my mind after I was fully into myself. Never forget that state of consciousness. Invoke it often. And I realized I must have been given a gift, but I never had fear again. not fear of death, not fear of spirits, not fear of power. This is a state of consciousness, and it's part of connecting to your authentic self. And it's something that you can have in your life. Now, I'm going to be looking at the comments. I am on the Facebook Live screen right now, and for some reason, they don't show the comments anymore. So I honestly will be looking at your comments, and I will be answering them as I see them when I get out of this and am on the Facebook page. But yeah, for some reason, they just don't show it anymore. If you end up watching this on YouTube, of course, you make comments there too. Please do. And realize as well, for those on the YouTube channel, that when you give us a thumbs up on our videos, that really helps us in our algorithm search. And also subscribe to us. We want to make a strong and powerful impact. And you may have to subscribe more than once, because YouTube seems to unsubscribe people just for the heck of it, and I don't know why that is. So you might have to just check your subscription and click on it more than once, because YouTube might have unsubscribed you by whatever reason that they've got. And that way you'll continue to get notified of our videos. And for Facebook, if you want to take part in the Facebook chats that we have here, the video chats, you can just go to the link in the description below if you're on YouTube, and you can go there or anywhere else if you're watching on Facebook through some other means, and just join the Facebook group. It's free. There's only one question that's asked, and that's, if there's posts that are made on here, please respect the privacy of the people. Okay, I am Dan, the host of the Dan Podcast, and I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this. Until next time.